Be sure to subscribe and like our channel. Welcome. Here we are, sitting in Toronto at 607 Gerrard Street East. This is Queen City Curio Videocast, and of course, the Deeper Down the Rabbit Hole podcast. You know, we've been doing this for 6 years. Some of you might know us on the podcast. The videocast is a little newer.
Videocast is newer. Podcast has been going for 12, man. It's been a long time.
Well, you shouldn't all date me like that because it really is embarrassing. Like, then I have to talk about how actually old I am. You know, bro. Like,
you know,
even I don't lie about that.
We're going to take Asian standards on this of how young you are.
Right. There we go. How young I am. There we go. So we're at 607 Gerrard Street. Tomorrow, in case you're wondering, if you happen to be a sponsor, you love this kind of stuff. Tomorrow we have a Monkey King meditation and introduction. We were going to do that on April 1st, obviously. He's a Chinese trickster spirit, and this is April 1st. And we're actually having a show. So maybe we delayed to make you think we weren't having a show because it was April Fool's. But we are. And it's not an April Fool's thing. But tomorrow we are actually doing a trickster lesson and whole thing. And an anti-Buddhist spirit?
Anti-Buddhist, yes. It nullifies itself.
Sort of like an anti-hero, but anti-Buddhist? I don't know.
It is when you read the stories of Journey to the West. Absolutely. So,
trickster spirit, Chinese trickster spirit that we're going to cover. If you're wondering, we're in East Chinatown. And if you ever come to the physical store, you realize we have multiple shrines, one of which is a shrine to the dead, relevant to what we're going to talk about today. And the Shrine to the Dead also has some blessed Hekate stuff, also relevant. It's got other spirits there too. People donate stuff all the day. Do you have to pay us anything to use that shrine, Zach?
No, you just come on up, and it's a community shrine for everybody. So,
right. So just come up. And second shrine that is actually active in our hallway is a shrine, a Buddhist shrine. With right now only has one spirit active, which is Danichi, but we're working on getting an artist to actually, which is the Sun Buddha, the creator Sun Buddha, which is the appropriate one to start with. And you just come up here and you sit in the hallway by the elevator and you can pray. And kind of actually, people have said that they know that we actually enlivened that right. Mm-hmm. And he's there, and you can kind of let your worries behind for a little bit. There's no cost to either of these shrines. You just come up. We maintain them for the community. The shrine from the Dead Shrine, like I said, has a few Hekate artifacts on there that we've built over the years, and a lot of other spirits too. Right, that people donated their psychopomps to the altar to help you. So, like, if you actually physically come here, there's a lot to do that's not actually having to pay. Although, like, if you're a sponsor, you know, you help us keep the lights on. Thanks in advance. We'll give you more information about the sponsorship at the end of the show. So today, who do we have coming down the pike, Zach?
Well, we have Cyndi Brannen, and she's a PhD. And she's also a spiritual teacher trained in energetic healer, psychic, and herbalist, merging her training in shamanism, tarot, past life work, meditation, and psychology. She teaches and writes about better living through witchcraft. Welcome to the show, Cyndi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I want to go to your monkey meditation now. Year of the monkey here. So whenever we start talking about the monkey in Chinese astrology,
we can hook you up.
Like,
we can hook you up.
Ears, my big monkey ears.
We can hook you up for tomorrow. We'll send you that link.
I think I pretty much have a deep relationship with the Monkey King for a lot of years.
Yes.
For better or worse, depending on your point of view. So you also live in Canada. You, like most of our guests, come from the United States, or you know, but you are a fellow Canadian from Nova Scotia.
I do. I live in coastal rural Nova Scotia in a teeny tiny fishing village very near world famous Peggy's Cove.
There you go.
Beautiful here.
I think today we're seeing a lot more love from Ontario. So
That we are.
we
Definitely seeing
started
that.
the show, said you didn't have many fans, but I think you do. I think you
I
do
think
based
you
on the
do. We're
comments.
seeing a lot of Ontario people kicking in.
So yeah. So you're getting a lot of love from Ontario, from Niagara, Toronto. So I think now you know the truth. There is Canadian love for
There's
you.
Canadian love.
Canadian Hekateans. Canadian Hekateans unite.
There you go. There you go. So one of the things we kind of ask, like, you have a PhD in psychology, but what convinced you to write Entering Hekate's Garden?
Well, I've studied herbalism my whole life, formally and self-directed studies. And I've always been enchanted by the green world since I was a very small child. Always, it's always been my happy place, to be in the woods, to be in nature, to be gardening. And many, many years ago, when I first got started studying, I guess, more clinical herbalism, I was really fascinated by it and, drawn to it, and then kind of discovered like books by the herbal kind of witchy herbalists, like Scott Cunningham books and so on. And I really started to become fascinated by the potential of a crossroads between psychology and herbalism that included magic, or what I might call like holistic herbalism that includes like the energetic aspect of plants in addition to the physiological properties. So that's kind of like the big container. Um, and then the kind of the thing that was the tipping point was I was reading many, many years ago the story of Jason and his Argonauts. And there's a part in one of the, so then there's different translations and there's different versions of the story, of course. So I was reading the Argonautica, and in the Argonautica, there's a description when Jason convinces Medea to do some magic and basically render useless this dragon serpent creature who guards the special fleece that he's so enchanted by. And in this particular version of the story, it's referred to as Hecate's garden. And so for me, I don't know if either of you have ever had one of those moments you read something and it's like ping, like there's like a key that gets offered to you and it unlocks something, and you go through that rabbit hole with glee and abandon. Like, what is this? Why would the author have called it Hecate's garden? And it lists all these plants, big long list. I don't know, have either of you ever seen this list? Well, it's in the book. But there's this list of plants, and then so I started to research all these plants, especially the ones whose names I didn't recognize.
Mhm.
And it opened up a whole world to me about how Medea was portrayed in those stories, and why might the authors have portrayed Medea as thus, and why was Medea's practice of magic, which was really magical herbalism, why did it, start to take on this nefarious tone? What started off as the practice of pharmakoi, this kind of holistic herbalism that was, rooted in like, like everyday life. But over time, I'm sure the two of you know a lot about the history of the witch, but as this all became bad over the centuries, I felt like it was really juicy and alive, and there was some reclaiming that I could do there. And excuse me. And there was also this idea that occult herbalism, which really intrigues me and has for many, like decades, that there was a way to kind of take some of the essence of the occult herbals I really liked and to merge it with like practical herbalism. And so that kind of, in a big, like a magical spell, those are all the ingredients that kind of led to the birth of this book.
Well, I mean, certainly Zach being a professional Chinese medicine doctor, like we're right there with you that there's the herbs and then
Yep.
there's the magic of the herbs, and you get a lot better results if you sort of combine
Mhm.
the magic of the herbs with the herbs when you're doing healing work or not healing work, as it were. like, like,
Yes.
but you still like. I think that's a myth, right? You're countering a modern myth, and maybe a modern myth that many people think. And your book's quite clear on this. That there's the herbs; they have bio bio properties, like neural properties, or I mean biochemical properties. There's their herb that has that, and then there's a magic aspect. And when you kind of add the magic aspect, there's a multiplier. Well, you imply a multiplier, not just it's not just the biochemistry of the herbs, like herbalism. There's something extra that happens when you do the magic, um, and we'd agree with that 100%. There's no question that you would get better. You always get better results from herbalism throwing the magic behind it. Now, you mentioned that there was a lot of times that you're spending in the forest and you kind of having these. What was your first experience with a plant spirit, which the book kind of talks about contacting plant spirits a lot?
Oh, I grew up like in suburbia, surrounded by the woods. And I think one of my first loves, one of my first plant spirits that kind of comes to mind right now is this beautiful birch tree that was kind of in this little grove. It was on top of a rock. It was this kind of like my little secret place that I felt really protected with this birch tree, the white lady of the woods. And I developed, a rich imaginary kind of scenario around the birch tree being like this white lady, who watched over the woods. I was a really unusual child that didn't fit in anywhere. So, to have the plant spirits in the woods, they were like my companions. My mom used to call them my imaginary friends. But to me, they like the trees that I developed relationships with were alive and very animated. Um, so the birch tree, we lived in a very woody place. So the birch tree, the maple tree, I'm still like, I love the poplar trees, although they're, more moody and different than the birch tree. So I would say it was just all those trees in my little suburban forest behind my house when I was really young. Um,
And when you got older, did you kind of, when you started getting down the magical path, were you able to kind of use some of those things to actually see changes in reality?
I think definitely, like that's a big discussion, right? Talking about working magic or connecting with spirits and petitioning spirits for a favor. I mean, that's a huge discussion, but I would say definitely, there's that one level when you can connect to the deeper spirits of a plant or a botanical, that one level of opening up your imagination to the mystical, to the deeper world, which I think is magical in and of itself. And then there's also like the, working with whatever components you might be working with from a tree or a plant or a flower to cast some kind of magic, to do a spell. In my language, it's a spell. Um, and, I think there is, working with those essences, there is a way to turn the dial um, towards healing, is really where I focus, towards healing. There is something greater and deeper and more profound that when we sing our spells to life and when we drink our infusions and add an incantation to them, we awaken part of the consciousness of the plant and they can become our helpmates.
So when you're talking about the herbal experiences, you do talk about infusions, like heat infusions, cold infusions. How does that actually start changing, well, the spell work or how you're approaching them when you're doing that processing?
When we're meditating, like we work with our breath, which is a physical thing, right? We control our breath, we breathe deep, We do different breathing techniques. That is a physiological process that opens us up to something deeper. And, when you work with a plant like that and you add water or make an oxymel or whatever it is you're doing, um, it's almost like the way we use breath to deepen our meditation experience and to open us up. We're opening up what is deeper inside that plant, especially if we attune our intentions to it with words or sigils or other correspondences. If we're connecting to the vibrational essence of the plant in a deeper way, I think it is really akin to how that physical breath can be used to open up to so much more.
So for just beginners, how would that look like from a step-to-step or even meditative practice? Like, what would you recommend to connect to the plants that way then?
I think we all maybe have plants that we're drawn to. If you start to think about like your childhood, maybe you had a special tree that you thought was a spirit, or maybe wherever you live, there's a plant, a rose bush or something. I would say that, first kind of look around in your life for plants that already have an affinity with you. Because a lot of times there's so much to study and learn in herbalism. And, I remember when I was first drawn to it and I wanted to know everything about everything. And I always say, start small, start with something that already appeals to you and that there is something there. There's like, there's a tug, something about that really wants your attention, and maybe explore that. You can explore it in an intuitive way and just, using the breath, connect to the plant spirit. If you can actually be with the plant spirit in a growing form, that's amazing. But you can also look at images. You can work with, spirit cards, for example. Like we use spirit cards in my school for those who can't have the actual plants, because plants are, of course, the physical plant is a representation of an archetype, the archetype of the rose, which is deeper and vast and can be really encountered in many different ways. So I, say like go with what feels comfortable and what you're drawn to. Don't get overwhelmed. And then, talk to the plant. Like we've all been doing this, since I've been doing this since I was a teenager and had a spider plant in my bedroom. Just talk, like start small and then go from there. There is so much. I mean, even in this book, there's 39 monographs, and that was a negotiation. I wanted to have enough monographs to give the reader a lot of options, but not so many monographs that it became overwhelming. There's many great herbal encyclopedias out there that they can get, if you want something like that. And readers can certainly like look in the notes in this book for my recommendations for those type of books. So I say start small. If it is a consumptive, something that you can safely consume, start with a tea, dandelion root tea. If you really like dandelions, if you love roses, rose hip tea, and get familiar with it. Or maybe you already do that. Maybe you have your dandelion tea every day already. And then you can start to explore that in a more spiritual way. You can look at the monograph. What are the, you might know the physical properties of dandelion, but you might not know the spiritual and the magical. So, maybe start to do a little bit of research. Maybe if you are, if you start your day with some type of spiritual or meditative practice, incorporate your tea, whatever it might be in the morning, into that practice and see it as part of your sacred work. And then kind of build from there. Build your repertoire by starting what's comfortable with you. If you are a person who has, like, if you go to like a TCM doctor or another type of herbalist for a treatment, as you receive your treatment, allow yourself to build a relationship with whatever herbs you're being given. And not just in an informational, scientific way, but also in a spiritual way. Like, I don't know, is that something that you talk with your clients about?
Well, I mean, generally our approach is very much of a spiritual herbal perspective, right? So everything is a reflection of something in your life. So when we're talking about things like building relationships, it's, well, what's your reaction? What does that mean? So this is where Chinese medicine will look at greater relationships, not just in the physical body, but also the spiritual body, the energetic body on things, right?
Oh, that said, that when I teach herbal classes here at the store, it's all about making relationships with the spirits of the plants,
Absolutely.
and then boosting the energy of the herbs by many factors, and then basically seeing what you could do for practical magic once you have a relationship. If you can have a relationship, some plants you cannot have a relationship with. They're just, you don't get along with them.
Yeah, just like people, right?
Just
So,
like people. I've done plants like that. Like, for example, American mandrake and mandragora, so the European version, and mayapple, which is sometimes
mhm.
called American mandrake. I spent like over a year trying to build a relationship with both versions. I made little poppets. I did all the kind of witchy things I do to connect to plant spirits. And I was just like, you know what? There's nothing here. It's been a year. Um, so sometimes, and that's okay. Like if you don't feel drawn to a plant, that's fine. Like there's no like you have to love mugwort in order to be a follower of Hecate. Like there's nothing. Let it be. This kind of beautiful blend of what you're learning either from going to a practitioner or taking courses, reading my books, and what naturally feels right for you, like what kind of fits. It's like any relationship. It takes time. Like it's not like what is that app that you swipe? Like,
Tinder?
Tinder?
yeah, that's right.
Wait, we need a Tinder app for plants. We just
Herbal Tinder app, right there.
swipe right. Nope, swipe right. This plant's just not sexy enough for me. Swipe right. I mean, um, I mean, yeah, it's
But I
not too.
think we're arguing for the opposite, right? Like I think we're operate like saying it takes you got to meet the plant for like a cup of tea, go for a walk, get to know it, and take your
Yeah,
time with it. Like not the swipe,
I'm
swipe, 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 swipe.
I think the biggest problem that I found, at least with the methods that we use in the center, isn't that there's no connection point. It's that people get sick from some plants they wouldn't expect, or they have an adverse
Mm.
reaction. Like I think everyone has a reaction to every plant. Just sometimes it's not the expected reaction. Like the book says it should be this, and that's not what happens because the plant you got the plant there, but their energy has got a shadow issue or something there that the plant just happens to be not jiving with, and they get ill or they get headaches or something like odd. And that's not necessarily bad. It's like an allergy, like sort of like it's saying that there's something in you that's not right, like, or it's not that the plant is wrong or you are wrong. It's that there's something out of sync between you and the plant, or there's a lot of self work that has to happen, or something
Or
like,
maybe it's just how it is.
or just how well. I mean, usually I think people are pretty flexible, like in their personality, but I just think that that's just how it is right now. Like, as in, for some reason, you know. Now, sometimes, like, that's like I started off by hating Rue because it would give me headaches all the time. But as I worked through it, I kind of realized, okay, it gave me headaches because it's a very loud plant for me. Like, uh, and like it's very not demanding, but when you're dealing with money issues, it's very cutting, like, you know, and it's just very loud and harsh. And once I got that down, I kind of felt like, okay, this is a very helpful plant. It's just harsh. Like, so it comes across as harsh, and I interpret that as a headache, like, but eventually, after a while, I got through it.
That's so interesting. So lavender is one that I'm fine with lavender. We're doing lavender in my school next month. So I have been communing deeply with lavender in preparation for that. And every year with lavender, it goes the same way. And I've thought about this. I was like, why? And I grow my own lavender if I buy lavender, different. I'm not much of an essential oil person, so it's usually like either fresh, like lavender I've grown once, or I'll buy some commercial lavender just so I can have that experience that most of my students have, right? And every year I'll get the lavender out because I like to keep it near me as we're getting, and start dialoguing with it. Every year it gives me like this mild headache. And I've thought about this a lot because lavender is really popular. And so one of my theories is that it has something to do, like there can be plants that we just don't get along with. And I don't know, do either of the two of you follow astrology? Are you into astrology?
I would say no.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Basic magical practices are basically not quite anti-astrology, but pretty close. Like,
Okay.
as in the idea is, if this is true, the job of the magician is to overcome that fate. That is your job
that's
as a magician.
interesting.
Like, your job is to overcome the fate, hand that you were given. I mean, granted, I wrote a book on chaos magic. I tend to have some mixed left hand and right hand path ideas, but so granted, that's the caveat there.
Because for me, because I've thought a lot about this. Like lavender, everybody loves lavender. Cyndi, why does lavender give you a headache? And I cannot tolerate the taste of it because we do Hecate's Kitchen. So I have an executive pastry chef who's one of my educators in my school. And, she develops recipes every month. And I said, I have to be honest with you. I cannot stand the taste of lavender. Like it's a hard no. So I won't be joining in. So we're doing eggs for Hekate this month. As part of, I kind of like, well, I can't stand the taste of lavender, so we're working on eggs. But so I do think like I see astrology as archetypal forces that, like the planets and the signs of the zodiac do have energies and signatures and do things. And they also are connected to something much more mysterious and greater. And I think when it comes to our personal astrology, we're in Western astrology, excuse me, in Western astrology, it's the lavender. I'm talking about lavender and I go hoarse. So in Western astrology, the plants are governed by planets and signs of the zodiac. And so my theory, and and I know this goes back, hundreds of years, that for people who have certain astrological profiles and plants with certain astrological profiles, there can be both great accord and also dissonance based on that. So I think that's a really interesting idea, to explore, like in terms of what someone's personality is and maybe their astrology, and also how that might influence how they interact with different plants.
Absolutely.
But
So,
do you feel that you also don't get along with other mercurial plants then, that are similar to lavender?
Well, if we're talking about my astrology, my personal chart is really dominated by mercurial energy. So I've thought a lot about that. I don't want to make this into Cyndi's deep dive therapy session about why she doesn't get along with
Hey,
lavender.
we get the truth. We get the truth out. Like,
and like I said,
it's
it's a
live
minor
radio.
thing.
We just kind of be like, yeah, let's drive in. Let's see.
That's the
Why is
hard
it?
questions. It's like being interviewed by Barbara Walters, crying
You know what?
over my
I
relationship
take that as a
with lavender.
compliment. Actually, I'll take that as a compliment. Just say, I got compared to Barbara Walters. I mean, I've hit the top tier,
There you
right?
go,
Like,
that's
I know.
and my sister loves lavender and she's super Mars energy. And, like I said, I've thought about it a lot. So, I see your point in saying that it can be something in our own composition that is causing the resistance. But I also think sometimes, rarely, it can be something more. I mean, it could also just be, I know, my Scorpio ascendant saying like, we don't want any of that softness around here.
right. So especially if you identify with that, right? It's like,
Right.
Mhm.
it's going to be like, Nah, don't listen to that sweet talker herb lavender. Get out.
No
Get
sweet
it out of
talking
here.
herbs.
Right.
I mean, lavender is kind of a sweet talker herb, right? Like, yeah, it's all right. Just speak nice.
That's right.
Get all
Es-
calm. Get calm. It's all
Especially
good.
the French lavender,
Oh
particularly.
yeah. It's definitely like, yeah. Just sweeten your tongue a little bit. Just be real nice. Like you can hear only the good things. I imagine if you identify with the Scorpion rising, it's like, no, that's not how it's going to be, Lavender. Let me show you.
Let me show you some pennyroyal and some wormwood.
right.
Right.
Or even,
So just
rosemary. Let's get things fired up around here. Anyway, it's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
I've had a lot of TCM over the years. So I always like to kind of bring my more Western merging psychology with herbalism, and have discussions with people who are TCM practitioners. Because, like, for me, I've had so many amazing treatments of, like, for the past 3 decades of my adult life. That's usually like a TCM doctor will be like, that's my idea of a doctor. Like, so I've had a lot of experience with that. So I just really appreciate, I like our group. Like, we've got a chaos magician, we got a it's, a traditional Chinese medicine doctor, and then me.
Well, technically
I
speaking,
mean, technically, I'm
yeah,
a chaos magician too. Andrea's my teacher here.
Oh, you're a chaos magician. So you got
and
the
technically I'm
Hekatean
a
witch
voodoo
and
priest as well. Like, so it's kind of crazy.
It is. It's a fun mix.
it is a fun
Right.
mix. So when you're talking about, like, you're a mixture of the left-hand path and the right-hand path. So I think that's a really interesting discussion, especially when it comes to herbalism.
Yeah, it is.
Um, and like the poison path, I don't know what the other path is. Like, we talk a lot about the poison path. So what is the other path?
Probably the healing path, right?
Probably healing, yeah.
I don't even think there's a name for it because it's not as popular. But I mean, I think there's benevolent herbs, and then the poison path's considered the malevolent herbs, but they're not.
Yeah.
They're like almost all of TCM is about poison.
Yeah,
Like,
it is. It is.
it's about dealing poison in micro doses to just basically kill off problems. Like I think the poison path has gotten a bad name because the herbs are all poisonous, but they're medicines. Like if used correctly, or they're psychological tools for self growth. Like or they're just beautiful plants. Like all of them, they're just the most famous plants because they're dangerous, so they get press. Like
Well, and they're powerful spirits, very powerful spirits.
yeah, they're very well. I mean, there's other herbs that are powerful spirits too. I mean, there's lots of non-poison herbs that are very powerful, but it's like I just think that the allure, and maybe that's from your experience too. It's the allure that they could kill you that makes them so sexy. It's like forbidden.
It's like, children behave,
The taboo
go on.
herbs.
Yeah, it's like they're the taboo herbs that everyone tells you, hey, stay away from. And I think it's so much that we talk about the poison path that we don't even remember the name for the non-poison path herbs that like everyone's just like, well, they're just normal herbs, right? Like
Yeah.
But the poison path is a healing path.
yes.
I mean, even like you said, there's that allure of the poisons and reading, like, maybe occult herbal books or whatever. There's something about that. They're very seductive, even to learn about them. And I think there is a sense, even reading books about them, that you're gaining access to, like, secret knowledge. And I keep a poison garden, and it is really part of my I guess my own personal development to tend to that. Like, for me, to have poisonous plants, in particular aconite, who is my lovely, it's about not only connecting with the spirit of aconite and all of the lore and everything to do with that, also known as wolfsbane, but it's also like with the poisons, it is an invitation to wholeness, to see ourselves like we aren't just, little happy pansies. You know what I mean? Or, whatever the cute little, I'm trying to think of cute little annuals that you put in a pot, which would be like opposite personality wise of like my aconite, which, grows in a hidden part of the property that nobody knows
I
what
got
it
an
is.
opposite on that one. Lavender. There we go.
Lavender, there you go. Maybe why I'm saying, oh, I love my aconite. She is the lady of the garden. Maybe that's it. And the lavender won't grow near my poisons. The lavender has a whole different place with time,
Absolutely.
where they
Yep.
can hang
Yep.
out and be nice to each other. But so I think, the poison path it offers so much like healing. It's an opportunity to understand ourselves better if we step back and say, why am I drawn to these poisons? What does it say about me? Is it an invitation to explore my own wholeness, my own darkness? Which I think that's where we kind of start to cross into Hecate's territory.
I agree. Yeah, that's
You
true.
know,
Especially
and,
on these plants that are darker, because Hekate is essentially tied in many myths to death, or the cemetery, or the gateways to the cemetery, or the gateways between worlds through the cemetery, or decay, or darkness, or all the stuff that she's tied to is definitely tied closely to the poison path and a lot of the myths. Um, and a lot of it is also confronting the fact that there is a narrative of witchcraft that is toothless, and these poison herbs subvert it. Basically says, witchcraft has teeth. For thousands of years, thousands and thousands of years, witches and shamans were using these poisons that have teeth. Like, this is not a toothless practice. Like, and you think you were getting to that, confronting your own dark side or using your own dark side. Not necessarily for curse work either. That's not what we're talking about. So don't take it out of context, everyone listening. I'm not saying go
Yes.
curse everyone. I'm saying, but you do at some point if you're gonna. I mean, I think it's fair to say if you're going to work with Hekate, you're going to have to confront your own dark side.
right, because I
And
think, like when you talk about Hecate, one of her most ancient roles is as a psychopomp. And, the
Mhm.
psychopomp is the one who guides souls between the worlds, both to the afterlife and into life. I mean, that's an aspect of Hecate that is often overlooked.
right,
That
because Hermes later was in later stories was sort of given the job. It kind of gets overlooked that previous stories had her in the role. Um, the older stories all had her in that role, not Hermes.
Yep.
and so, like the poison path is about soul work. If you are using like microdosing to heal, I mean, and even today, with the popularity of like ayahuasca ceremonies, that's the whole idea of having those experiences, those psychotropic experiences to heal the soul, right? Because, cognitive behavioral therapy might tell you how not to blow up at your boss at work, but it doesn't fix the problem. And, that's where plant medicine can come in and do more. And, the poison path, which is about our own mortality, of course, Hecate being this psychopomp who ferries souls both, into the afterlife, and then also as Aletheia, as the divine midwife, back into this life, that she is the one. So when we are working with poisons, then we are confronting our own mortality. And in a sense, it is a way of honoring Hecate and invoking the idea of the psychopomp. Because, whenever we are putting ourselves in a situation where our mortality becomes obvious, and I think childbirth is that, death is that, and then I also think working with very noxious plants is that as well, right? Because if I don't wear my gloves,
You could get sick.
I get very, very sick from my aconite. Aconite demands me to be aware of my mortality.
Yep.
And I think that's what Hekate teaches. She scares the life into us. And working with poisonous plants can also scare the life into us. Because
That's like
they
almost a
remind us.
Fight Club.
It is a Fight Club metaphor.
It's like you need to have a near-life experience.
I don't think I've ever had anything I've said in my life compared to Fight Club. This is kind of
You
cool.
did now.
No,
So that's
you
good.
didn't.
Now. This is what I get for hanging out with chaos magicians. This is fun. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's kind of what you're describing, a near-life experience.
What is it? What happens in Hecate's garden stays in Hecate's
Stays in Hecate's garden. There you go. It doesn't get better than that.
It doesn't.
I mean, I think that's been a catchphrase from some Saturday night rituals right there. What happens
I most definitely have.
Hecate's ritual stays in Hecate's ritual. Like, we don't talk about that. It's kind of interesting because you have a lot on the herbs too, but you also mix in the book. There's a fair amount of spell work that you kind of mention and talk about, and try to link back to maybe some of the Greek stories of Medea and Circe, and how they might have used spellcraft in this way. And maybe you could talk about your favorite. What's your favorite spell in Hecate's garden?
Oh, wow. I would say, let me see what's right on my desk right now. That's from the book. So the oleum, it's called the death walking oil in the book. We call it oleum spirita, which just means spirit oil. And that really has become like the central botanical formulation that I teach and that we work with in ritual ways and different ways, for anointing and different ways. Some students also work it in more of the physiological, like anti-inflammatory properties of the oil. So I really, really love that. So that's the death walking oil. And the idea, again, sticking with our theme of confronting our own mortality and, embracing the psychopomp aspects. I love that one. What else is, I'm gonna think there's so many in here. You know what? I love asters. I love asters. They grow all around my property here. And there is this recipe for it. It really isn't a spell, but it can be, like amplified into a spell, are those aster bath bombs. I make them every fall. I love asters. I love taking a very humble plant and helping others see it as so much greater than, just a little plant at the side of the road that's kind of cute and purple, that there's a whole lure around it. I love them all. I love the things I do with seaweed and moss. I like the recipes.
Well, tell listeners about that seaweed and moss one, because we've got the book, but they don't have the
We
book
got the
yet.
book, but they don't.
Or maybe they
For our
do.
listeners, some of them do, but
So with moss is really interesting. I'm fascinated by moss. Is there moss in traditional Chinese medicine?
absolutely. We have a whole coast on China, right? So seaweed is a thing. Seaweed and moss are a thing.
So in the book, what do I talk about in the book? You can eat it, of course. Lovely. Oh, and the rockweed wreath. So if you are fortunate like me to live in a place where there is more rockweed than a person could ever do anything with in a lifetime, the wreath as a place to bless and to cleanse, working with the salt properties and also the aspects of Hekate Inalia, which is a very ancient title of her that means goddess of the oceans, again, which loops us back to the in-betweenness of Hekate. For the ancients, they saw the ocean as the great, that it was the way into the deeper world, the way into the underworld. If you think of like those Pluto's gates, maybe you've seen some of those or visited those that they found, gates to the underworld, and they're always associated with like water. There's the caves at Eleusis, which there's water nearby. It's a little bit different, but so it's this whole idea of connecting to the ocean through something that is definitely, widely available here. So the reeds, I love to make dried reeds. You can do other spells that aren't in the book with seaweed. They're great for cleansing and blessing. And, I hope in writing about seaweed in the book, it inspires people to look around at what botanicals are plentiful where they live, and grow naturally, and see if maybe there's ways that they can work with them in magic. And moss, I really like moss because it's ancient. And my word of the year for 2023 is ease. So I have a little dish of moss. I don't like to take too much, but there's moss. I live where there's so much granite, right? There's so much moss on the granite here. And then there's other types of moss as well. So I think moss is a great spirit to have around when we need to slow things down and work according to a longer time. Like we might say the arc of the universe. But I think Moss almost functions on like Kairos time, the time of the gods, like because Moss does not pay much attention even to the wheel of the year. Like it pays a little bit of attention to the seasons, but not so much. Moss keeps its own schedule. So, if you like, I would say a simple way to connect with Moss would be like in your life, if you feel like you are too much in grind culture, you can learn a little bit about moss and connect to the spirit of moss. Even you might be surprised where you find moss around your home or on your, when you're walking to work in the morning, and just think about moss and how it offers something completely different to like the hustle culture that we live in today.
Well, do you have any upcoming? We'll get the links out in our. We'll definitely get the links out on the school that you mentioned. Events coming up, or
events coming up. We have our Hecate's Garden retreat, online retreat that is happening on the May full moon. I am the speaker, like the keynote speaker at a wilderness camp Hekate in Michigan, coming up in July, but I think that's just about sold out. And you can find out more about Covina, which of course is Latin for coven, anytime by just going to keepingyourkeys.com. And yeah, my new herb book is out, Entering Hecate's Cave, which is a deep dive into the psychology, the depth psychology that we can lean into for healing into wholeness, because I really do see a common theme across both of these books. Because, some people have said, well, you wrote a book about herbalism and now, you've kind of gone back to your psychological roots, as it were. And I said, well, to me, they are both about a path of healing into our fullness. They are offered as antidotes to, I love how you said, witchcraft with no teeth. So I offer my books as antidotes to a life with no teeth. And what it's like to be able to actually like have teeth and really like chew and digest all that life has to offer and all that we are in a way that's magical and meaningful. So Entering Hecate's Cave. And then, of course, there's the Keeping Your Keys podcast as well, if they want to listen to me talking about these things every week.
There you go.
We'll
put all those links into the YouTube. We'll put all the links in the YouTube. We had a lot of people who commented. We really appreciate you all stopping by. So
Absolutely.
We do. So Cyndi, stay on for a second real fast. We do have some things we have to announce. We already told everyone about the Monkey King, which Cyndi might attend. That's going to be me running a meditation, and hopefully the Monkey King doesn't inspire me to have him piss on myself or something.
Yeah, no. But
literally part of his stories is that's what he does sometimes, because he's a trickster and he doesn't care
about on authority figures.
This is on authority figures. So, when we're doing meditation, hopefully I'm like, go imagine pissing on Andrieh right now. I'm hoping that doesn't, I don't say that because it could happen.
No, it could, but no.
No. But the following week, what do we have going on for ritual? Since we do a
So
ritual,
the
our class
following
every
week, keeping it
Sunday.
to Easter, right? We do have the connected God connecting to the crystal spirit within ritual.
Right.
So that'll be
So
really
this
awesome.
is not, I should say, this is a Christian ritual that we're going to do. However, it's a Gnostic Christian ritual. So it's not quite, if you're listening, it's not quite from the States. It's not Republican Jesus. It's the messenger spirit of the Gnostics, which is the divine spirit of divine love and message from God and wisdom. Very different type of spirit, but it is appropriate for us to do it on Easter. So we're going to do that. Then what else? What do we got coming up? If you're a sponsor and you help us pay the lights on, keep the lights on, and this is in person and online.
Well, then after that, we got our workshop on healing trauma through self-hypnosis. And then we get into a whole slew of rituals and workshops from there.
Right. And of course, as course, we announce the same thing every week, starting July 1st.
72 Goetia, 3-year project.
That's right. We're going to have a workbook for each Goetia. We're going to summon each one with everyone. And we're also going to summon each semaphorish every 2 weeks till we're done in order.
With Stephanie Colony.
Right. Who's going to help us and a couple other people. So that's like, if you're a sponsor, that's the kind of stuff we do. Like, you can help us keep the lights on. For all the sponsors listening right now, we really appreciate it. There's different sponsorship levels. And in fact, even at the lowest level of the sponsor, you can come in. Anyone can come in at any time. We're open and just look at the books. But if you're a sponsor, you can check them out. Pick up the book, Zach. The one we have. Hekates. Hekate. There we go. There we got double. It's in the library right now. If you're in Toronto, you can come just look at it. Like I said, even at the $10 sponsor level, you can check it out. And you can see if you like it. And then we have hundreds of tarot cards that are sample decks that you can, like 500 different tarot cards that are sample decks you can check out. There you go. There's some now. I got one here too. Like, I have this one. Like, this one I just got. It's cool.
What was that?
Upside down, so turn it around. Turn it around.
Whoops.
There we go.
Kabbalistic Tarot 5187. I think it's a rare edition that you can't actually buy, but anymore. And somebody gifted to me or traded for Michael.
Did you know that there's a PGM tarot? Like a Greek magical papyri tarot?
I can believe that, actually. No, I should look at getting that, actually, just for myself. Like,
I thought you might be interested.
I get interested. I mean, kind of like, PGM stuff, And then, what do we have going on next week for the show?
We got Ronnie Pontiac, and we're going to be talking about, it's more of a historical anthology about America and the different paradigms and systems that went into it to form American culture, or at least influence it. So that'll be a fun conversation.
Zach, the history nerd, gets to come out next week.
Yes.
Very good. So as we say to everyone every week, stay well. Try to get as much happiness as you can in your life. And thanks for coming by. We will see you all next Saturday live. And we want to thank Cyndi. Hopefully we can have her back on when she gets her new book fully out.
So
then we have to get her back on. Oh, great. Hey, there's Toronto wait, is it tornado warnings in Toronto? No.
Nope, I just say tornado warning.
Okay. That's what I was going to say.
It's a Toronto warning. No.
Nope, that's
baby.
No, there's terrible storms, in the southern United States right now that I know a lot of people are really impacted by, with the tornadoes and wildfires and so on. There's a lot going on.
As it is. It's April Fool's Day. This time, Mother Nature didn't laugh.
Mother Nature did the joke.
Well, she's not laughing, though. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, she isn't.
Stay safe, everyone, especially like if there's a tornado warning or something like that. We will see everyone next week. Just let's take us on out, Zach.
Yep.
Let's make sure we get the recording. So.
All right. I'm live and recording still.